Thank you all for coming. We are gathered here today, not to mourn, but to celebrate. I know it can be hard to say goodbye to a friend, but it's time we accept the truth. Gaming is dead. E3 has been cancelled for the third time in 4 years, and it's become clear that the gaming expo we all know and love is gone. So, it's time we honor the life of E3 by doing what E3 does best. A drawn-out presentation given by a white guy in a gaming t-shirt. Woo! E3, not that one. The Electronic Entertainment Expo. Since 1995, it's been the place for the biggest announcements in the gaming industry. Game reveals, console debuts, live demos, Reggie. Beginning as a simple trade show for gaming companies to discuss their upcoming endeavors with investors, over the years E3 evolved into a massive event that was geared towards the fans. Lots of companies got involved, but in particular the big three of Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo would draw in audiences of thousands to witness the reveals of their latest and greatest games. And for those who attended the event in person, you might even get your hands on a new demo of unreleased games. There is a ton of gaming history that was made at these events, but I'm not here to give you an in-depth breakdown of every single year of E3. Honestly, there are other people out there that probably know more about the event's history than I do, and most of the early footage I could find looks like this.
Mario.
I want to focus on a more personal perspective, taking you through my experience with E3, some of the highest highs and lowest lows that I can remember, and what the event has meant to people like me, the 21st century gamers.
This guy seriously talking about himself at a funeral?
He's eulogizing about himself at a funeral.
The first I learned of E3 was probably around the age of 12, when a friend described it to me as the place where you can play video games that haven't come out yet. And I was sold. But that's all the event really was to me at the time. Some mysterious entity holding all the forbidden games like the new Kirby, Zelda for Wii U, Madden 14. I didn't really keep up with the gaming industry because I was 12, so I didn't know all the big reveals that were happening or really understand the significance of the event because I was 12. I think the stuff I cared about as a kid often felt like it was just shoved at me by other people, like, look Tyler, something to care about.
How do you read?
But E3 always existed in the back of my mind as something I knew I wanted to go to someday. It wasn't until a few years later I learned what E3 was really about.
Michelle Obama.
Ukuleles.
Mexicans.
Miller Lite. Incels.
Sure, E3 was special in the 2000 teens for me. In that time, it went from this mystical place where you could play unreleased video games to a time of year where I could enjoy some new trailers, to just this absolute mess of excitement, anticipation, and some really weird shit. I think 2015 is the first year I started to pay attention, watching some trailers and reading some headlines, but it was 2016 when I really began to watch presentations and appreciate it. The funny thing is, as someone who mostly cared about Nintendo, the year I decided to start watching was the year Nintendo decided not to do anything. Okay, that's kind of an exaggeration, but 2016 was the year where Nintendo did not have a formal presentation in any capacity. They had already left the main stage a few years prior in favor of doing digital events, and in 2017 they would come back with digital presentations, now in the form of Nintendo Directs. But in 2016, that was the awkward in-between year where they didn't have a real presentation, no Nintendo Direct, just Nintendo Treehouse Live. At Treehouse they did just a few in-depth looks at some of the games from the show floor, and that was really it, but to me it did not matter. They kicked it all off with an amazing new trailer for Zelda Wii U of all things, where they finally revealed the official title of Breath of the Wild. And basically their entire presence at E3 that year was themed around Zelda. Their whole space on the show floor was decked out with Zelda decor, and I thought this looked so cool, even though they gave up on promoting anything else that year. They also showed off Pokemon Sun and Moon, Ever Oasis, Can You Tell I'm Running Out of Games Already? But hours of these live streams were dedicated to just Zelda, And while that might not be enough to truly compete with the big-hitting actual presentations from Sony and Microsoft this year, as a Nintendo fan, it was more than enough to get me excited about E3. Finally, I was watching this stuff live, experiencing these reveals alongside thousands of other people right at the moment they happened. And as someone that grew up with Zelda and Pokemon games, it didn't matter that Nintendo had not much else to show. Almost all of my needs were met right here. But the truth is, there were other games than Zelda that existed in 2016, and before Nintendo's live streams even started, I was already diving headfirst into my first E3 binge, starting with Sony. Sony's 2016 press conference might have been one of the best ever. They started up with this huge, bombastic orchestral performance leading straight into gameplay of God of War, and I think the theme of this whole show that got them a lot of praise was just pure, uncut gameplay. Looking back, I feel like they might have gotten a little too much credit for showing 10-minute long sections of gameplay that really started to make the whole show drag. But at the time, people were so thankful for more than just flashy cinematic trailers, and the most important thing here is that every single one of these games looked really good. God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, Spider-Man, not that one, Crash Bandicoot, Final Fantasy, Detroit Become Human, The Last Guardian, Resident Evil 7. While not every single one of these games wound up being huge successes, these were big name, exciting games at the time, and we were flooded with a lot of gameplay from a lot of them. For me personally, I remember being blown away with the Spider-Man gameplay they showcased here, and for a long time that became the PlayStation game I most desperately wanted to play, even though I didn't have a PS4. I also watched Microsoft's presentation for the first time this year, but I don't really remember this one because they showed Gears of War 4 and talked about how the box is smaller now, which isn't that big of a deal because so is mine. Still, E3 2016 as a whole deserves a lot of credit for broadening my video game horizons. Spending a weekend watching all sorts of E3 coverage got me exposed to so many new games that I couldn't help but get excited, even over games I had never heard of before. I think as a kid it's easy to just buy a game because it has a recognizable character's face on it, you know, like Drew Brees. But E3 2016 was an important step in my development of going from someone who cares about things with Mario's face on it to someone who cares about things with anyone's face on it.
I kinda get what you mean. I never would have been exposed to putting out fires if it weren't for my friends. Now it's my favorite thing.
And I never would have been exposed to this funeral if I didn't violate house arrest.
Moving on to 2017, this year was absolutely fire.
Hey.
I may have just started caring about big boy games, but this year Nintendo came back with their E3 2017 Direct, which I think will forever go down as one of the best Nintendo Directs of all time. At this point, the Switch had just released alongside Breath of the Wild. It was already doing leagues better than the Wii U ever did, and for the first time in years, Nintendo had momentum. And they were so ready to capitalize. Fucking everything's on Switch now! Kirby, Yoshi, Splatoon, Zelda DLC, arms, legs, feet, Xenoblade, Metroid Prime 4, grass, dinosaurs, holy shit, it's Mario! This was one of the best moments in the history. That's the end of the sentence. Now for real, this was probably one of the best times to be a Nintendo fan in a long time. It was the start of a new generation. All the fans who had suffered through the Wii U era were so excited about this new thing, and it was even pulling in the old fans who had skipped out on the Wii U, or the new fans who didn't even know what the hell that was. And together, we had all these brand new games to look forward to. Nintendo was back, baby, and Microsoft made the damn box smaller again!
The smallest Xbox ever.
Yeah, I had remembered this year as one of the most iconic E3s, but looking back, that was really just the Nintendo fan in me. Sony and Microsoft still put on good shows, but it was a lot of the same as last year. Sony had God of War, Detroit Become Human, and Days Gone again, well, ending with Spider-Man gameplay, just like last time. And Microsoft had another hardware revision that felt kind of unnecessary, and an okay assortment of games, but nothing mind-blowing. Their biggest reveal was the grand finale with Anthem, and that went on to become Anthem. I will give them credit though for this beautiful presentation of Ori and the Will of the Wisps, which inspired me to play both of the games, and they are some of the most beautiful games I've ever experienced. I also watched Bethesda and Ubisoft do their presentations this year, which marks the beginning of me caring about individual game developers and the end of my chances at love. These shows never have the draw of the presentations from the big three, but it was fun to dive into the gaming community a little deeper this way. Not everyone knows what a Bethesda is, but when you watch these shows, you are surrounded by some of the most passionate fans out there. And I always loved seeing people just get mind-numbingly excited over these things, even when I knew nothing about them.
That's how I feel about funerals. I don't know what happened, I just love sharing in the hype.
Someone died.
Woo! Woo!
E3 2018 in a weird way inspired most of my early videos on YouTube. Don't watch them. Yeah, this was my little baby era on YouTube where I was just starting out and too scared to show my face on camera. But you don't need a face to make a shitpost about Waluigi. So as someone who was fully invested in E3 at this point, I watched everything and even had something of an eye towards making content around it, if you can call it that. I remember Nintendo opening up with Daemon X Machina because someone probably asked. Then we got a reveal for Super Mario Party, which was hype, but really, the star of the show here was Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. This one game took up more than half the direct, but they got away with it because this Everyone Is Here trailer was absolute flames. That was all I remember anyone talking about afterwards. It became such an iconic trailer and a big piece of Nintendo history, in my opinion. Some other highlights from this year include a solid showing from Microsoft, where for some reason the game I remember the most here is The Awesome Adventures of Captain Spirit. I actually went and played that game, but I have heard not a single person talk about it since. It's what I remember though. But there was still a pretty good collection of games here, like Ori, Sekiro, We Happy Few, Cuphead DLC, Dying Light 2, Battletoads, and Gears 5. And then of course the main event was the grand finale with Cyberpunk. And you can't forget Cyberpunk. God knows I've tried. Sony really went all out this year with a venue they specifically designed to look like it came straight out of this trailer for The Last of Us Part 2. And I thought that was super cool. By this point, E3 was becoming just as much about the spectacle of it all than it was about the actual games, but I think that's okay. Gaming companies were designing these elaborate sets and performances that didn't just announce games, but brought them to life. I know some people only cared about seeing real gameplay, but to me, this kind of stuff is part of what made E3 special from the beginning. This event is more than just a collection of trailers. This is a celebration of video games, and it's the spectacle of it, the stage presence of the presenters, whether it's incredible or incredibly awkward. That's what sets these events apart. You don't see this done anywhere else in the entertainment industry. There aren't people packing the theaters just to watch a trailer for Migration, but E3 made the act of debuting trailers and talking about the future of games something to be remembered. And while we're on the topic of E3 and stage presence, I want to talk about my guy, Reggie Fils-Aimé. If you don't know him, Reggie is the former president of Nintendo of America, and for a long time was one of the main faces behind Nintendo's E3 presence every year. And I just wanted to say, I think it's really cool that people like Reggie have become iconic figures in the gaming world, almost purely because of what they did at E3. I have never seen someone who is so unanimously loved on the internet, and I didn't think that was really possible. But that kind of speaks to a larger point I'm trying to make here. Outside of just Reggie, we got to know a lot of the figures behind some of our favorite games. And while I'm not really a fan of being like, oh, this millionaire president of a tech company is wearing a gaming shirt, he must be one of us. I'm not advocating for that, but it's the moments where you get to meet the developers, see some people who are truly passionate about what they do. Moments like when Davide Soliani bursts out in tears because Shigeru Miyamoto is presenting the game that he worked on. Those are special moments. It deepens that sense of community, and lets you see that some people really care about this stuff beyond just making money. And ultimately, that's what was special about E3. These weren't just press conferences for investors, these were community events. E3 was for the fans, the developers, still a business thing, sure, but it brought people together. It was this opportunity for fans of all games, no matter who you are, to get excited for one thing, one time of year, one big event that celebrated everything the gaming world had to offer, and everything that was coming next. I was personally exposed to so many games I never would have heard of if it weren't for the fact that this was E3. This is exciting. I gotta watch the Bethesda show because everyone's watching the Bethesda show and look how excited they are. The passion and enthusiasm from some fan bases just becomes infectious. I can't tell you how many times I've seen a game reveal where I've gone, yeah, I've never played one of those games in my life. But that's hype as fuck, because people get so happy when a game they've been waiting a long time for is revealed, and how can you not feel happy for them? And with E3 being filled with reveal after reveal after reveal, it is so easy to walk out of there feeling good and feeling excited about something. Through all of their moments, good and bad, funny or just plain awkward, every year E3 was an event that connected people. It exposed them to new things, and it made memories that were sometimes more memorable than the games themselves. And that is why I will always remember E3.
Wow, who would have thought that an event based solely around stupid trailers for games that probably won't even be good could bring such a profound sense of community into someone's life?
Yeah, it's amazing how people develop such an attachment to things that probably aren't even that good for them.
Well, why would something that people care about so much just end?
I don't know for sure, but ever since COVID, companies have realized that just putting together a digital showcase gets the same job done in a much lower effort, lower cost kind of way. So E3, which was already experiencing a bit of a decline, has become unnecessary and unable to stay open without any big name publishers. But while these digital events ultimately get us the same exact reveals in a more streamlined format, it's the intangible things that they lack. The unscripted moments, the cheering crowds, the charm of each presenter, polished or unpolished, the physical sets, the stupid gags, and most of all, the collective excitement over this one event where we knew everyone was going to be there. I think it was so important to have every major game publisher there in one place over the course of just one weekend. It made it feel like a holiday. It brought together every single type of fan all at once and encouraged you to watch everything, even the conferences you're not interested in, because who cares if they're talking about Gubble? It's E3. It's exciting. I will give respect to Jeff Keighley, host of the Game Awards, for putting together Summer Games Fest, the closest spiritual successor to E3 we could possibly have. That at least brings back some of that collective excitement once a year, but it's not on the same scale of E3. The truth is that E3's time has passed. The industry has moved on, and there will never be something quite like it again. All we can do now is appreciate the fact that for a while, E3 captured this perfect storm of a budding gaming industry and a passionate group of fans in order to create something truly unique. And that's all I really have to say about E3. May they rest in peace.
Nice one!
Alright, I better go. Can only evade house arrest for so long.
But wait, one more thing. Now, gamers, it's time we put down our cream and honor the life of E3 through the art of cremation.
Great job, man. Hey, another round of ice cream on me, you guys. That was great.